Yes, and it's a day that brings with it a lot of hope. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
I'll play Marquez role this morning. The day is bright, it's bright and clear. Oh, happy day, a day of joy.
Oh dear.
Well,
Go
July
back to
7th.
primary school.
Absolutely. It's July 7th. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayo Makinde.
It wasn't a day of joy or a day of happiness yesterday for those citizens who took protests to the EU office. Remember that report about how the elections turned out, so they were not exactly happy with it. In fact, they went on. Some of them, they say that Nigerians, sometimes when you see a group of people say Nigerians, you wonder, oh, wait, okay, well, if it's 2, 3, 4, 10, they're still Nigerians. So those of them who went there thought, they used certain words that, yes, it's just ridiculous to come up with that report. It didn't make sense. They didn't agree with it, and hence the protests. And sometimes you just wonder, look, protests to EU office, the report is out already. So what? They're supposed to come up with another report and say, okay, all of what we did was wrong, and it was not exactly right. We take all of this back. I don't know. I guess people have different ways of responding to different things. But look, the way some of these things might have turned out, because look, if the group felt so strongly about some of these things, then they have a right to, actually. So what's wrong with them coming up with their own report? Saying, no, this is what we found. So this, you raised this, but this is our own empirical material saying, no, this is not the case. This is how it is. I mean, on that basis, you may just have something, with which to talk about. But if you just go ahead with that protest, maybe they thought that was the best way that they could do it. But I just thought, looking at that, I thought, look, okay, so what next? And, to make this all the more interesting, sometimes you can understand how these things play out. There's a backstory to this because, look, cases are going on in the courts. There are those who may think that, well, they just might have an ear on what's playing out in the courts of public opinion. And so they need to ensure that they have some sort of balance of opinions, as it were, out there in public space, so people don't think that it's only geared towards a certain trajectory, a certain direction. And so hence probably why that came up. But we also do know that INEC did speak up a couple of days ago about, I think that some of them were quoted to have said, this was the best planned elections. That's what we read out, best planned elections. But of course we know, and when they speak about the process, that was what some of the reports highlighted, how we needed to improve upon the process. And look, whichever elections we do in this country, we always want to improve and do things better. So no matter the outcome of any elections, the key thing that we always look to do is do better than we did the last time. Well, yes, people may understand why this appears to be any different, why sometimes the line is blurred between the process and the outcome. Maybe understandable to some people, maybe not to some others. And of course, it's a democracy. Ideas will have to contend, but it's got to contend in ways that will ensure that above all else, we improve, we do better. Because if we say, well, that's the best we could have done, if you say it's the best planned elections, you also will remember that several other people will come forward and tell you, well, but you said certain things were going to happen. This one didn't happen, which would have helped build confidence in the process. Remember why several people turned up to vote in the first instance was because of some of the reasons that they gave about how the process was going to play out. So they thought it didn't matter the outcome for some people. If the process, if they felt it was well and good, that's fine. It's just like football, or sports. You know what they say? If the officiating, they thought it was really good, and then they would have just thought, okay, the best team won. Do you know what they say in sports? And then they shake themselves, spirit of sportsmanship, even though sometimes they disagree with the ref, but yeah, one or two goals, but he could have done his best. But now if you talk about VAR, okay, I'll just stop at that point because that will be stretching it a little further. But guys, that is just what I think on this matter.
Oh, Jim Lynn, there's a phrase you used, best planned elections.
Quoting INEC.
Yeah, quoting INEC. Okay, so in in preparations for the African Cup of Nations or for the World Cup, the NFF and the coaching crew of the Super Eagles would sit down and plan the camping process, plan the team selection, plan the camping process, plan the style of play, plan the uniforms, plan how they will move from one location to the other. They've planned it. When it's time for the tournament, sometimes they get delayed at the airport. Sometimes their flight doesn't arrive when it's supposed to. And then eventually they get to the venue for the competition. Game 1, they win. Oh, fantastic. They started on the winning note. Game 2, they lose. Game 3, they win. Game 4, they lose. What we're saying is they planned. But when it comes to the execution, it's a totally different ballgame, because when you're out in the field, you're not playing against yourself. You're playing against different factors and different elements. Howbeit, in the midst of that, there are people who are brought to the stands to watch the game. And dictionary, I actually went to look for a dictionary. Collins Dictionary says, an observer is someone who studies current events and situations, especially in order to comment on them. So, spectators are brought into the stadium. I don't know why I'm using football as an analogy here.
It makes sense.
They're brought into the stadium to watch the game. Yeah. And then later they go back to their different homes, or even within the stadium, they're telling you how, no, I didn't like the way Okocha played that. I didn't like the way Ihanacho did this. This is what Ihanacho should have done. That's what Ihanacho should have done. And many times Nigeria will tell you have more coaches watching than out there in the field. At the end of the day, the spectators came in there to watch the game and then to comment on them. And the truth is, you actually gave them permission when you sold that ticket to them. In this case, INEC accredited multiple observers from different places, and the EU is one of them. But you brought them in so that they can give you a report on what they saw. So why are you now protesting that, hey, I do not accept, or I accept something that you were the one that told them, okay, come and let me know because the truth is this, the EU might have looked at it from one side. Another group or another observer group, another person might have looked at it from another side. So at the end of the day, over 50 reports that INEC says they've collected. At what point, what's the aggregate summation? What would you say is the summation of all the observers? What is that? What are those things that they have observed that you can say, okay, this is what we'll pick up, that's what we'll improve on, this is where we'll pick up from? Because, as I said, they played their first game, they won. They played the second game, they lost. But they went on to the third game and they won because they sat back to look at, okay, in that second game, where did we make mistakes? What lessons can we draw from this? And then they go into the third game, they win. They go into the fourth game, they win. And come on. We might not like what they said, but are there lessons we can draw from what they said? Because we asked them to come and do the observation.
Not just asking them. These are donor agencies too.
No, I don't even want to go
elections. No, it's part of it. You can't take their money and not want to hear what they have to say. They want credible, transparent elections. If they donate and they say, look, this is what's been happening, and not just once or twice. They've been doing over time. Over time. So and guess what? They've done capacity building for INEC and INEC officials and all other observer teams as well. Yeah. So at the end of it, I didn't want to go from the angle of their donor partners. But it's a fact. It's a fact. But then the fact that I said, okay, Chamberlain, please come and look at what I'm doing here. And then you finish time, you don't tell me that, Nelta, no, the way you kept that pen or the way this newspaper position is not right, you should have kept it this way. Plus recommendations, you should have kept it this way or work on this so that the next time you better place it. And then I go back and I say no, or Nigerians, or some people come and say that you are trying to, what do they say? What was that word they used again? They're trying to undermine the nation. You're trying to undermine me by telling me where I'm making mistakes. Hello, Ayo, please don't undermine me. Even though I asked you to come and observe what I'm doing.
Okay, I won't undermine you, but let Bukola have the first go on this.
Well, what's more to add, not to add, Chamberlain? I'm on Chamberlain's side this morning. Let's go there. Donor agencies, they've supported our electoral process with their own hard-earned money, not just our electoral process. They support other aspects, of our national life or social reconstruction. You can talk about migration issues, trafficking, and all of that. You find this organization there in the business of promoting good governance, well-being and other values that can promote, the growth of society. If you check the civil society organization situation room list, the name of this civil society organization is not there. And this protest is on Nigerian, if there's any word. Nigerians are known to be hospitable, known to be friendly. This is an independent organization. They're, as a matter of fact, visitors to the country. And what have they said, by the way, that is new to our electoral process? How many years, has Nigeria been conducting elections, at least under this republic? Quite a number of elections. What has improved? Perhaps we should take a second look at what the European Union is saying. They've observed systemic weaknesses in our electoral process. They're calling for a review of what they observed seem to be ambiguities in the law. They're also talking about a more accountable process for INEC, the appointment of INEC members. And by the way, INEC has begun the process, of the prosecution of the erring officer in the Adamawa election. So is that anything new to our electoral process? I could go on and on with the list, and the evidence abounds there, about the outcome of the 2023 general election. But what we do not have is anything contrary to those who are opposing what seems to be the flawed nature of that election, i.e. the civil society organizations, and even the presidency that has come out to say that they're rejecting the report. What is your empirical evidence for the outright rejection of this result? We've had an election in Nigeria in the past where the president came out to say, look, I acknowledge that the process that brought me to power was flawed. And hence, the commencement of the electoral reform process, I think we should be more honest, about the situation of things. INEC can come out and say that, look, we're giving ourselves a pass mark, but we know that the conduct of elections, as we said time and again on the program, is a multi-sectoral process. So all of those agencies that were involved should also take some form of responsibility for the outcome of the election. Ayo, I could continue going on and on reviewing the 2023 election.
Well, for me, maybe you should also be an election observer. So as another has suggested, you would also be able to observe and comment. But hey, on the comical side, you began by saying that you paid to watch the match. Well, according to Chair Chamberlain as well, and Bukola calling our attention, well, the EU also contributed financially, so they have a right to comment, just the same way you comment about Arsenal and and the rest of them. I mean, hey, it shouldn't even surprise you guys. Sticking with Nyota's analogy about football, it shouldn't surprise us because people who live in the same house have different teams that they support, and guess what? They quarrel. So let it not surprise you guys, that all of this is happening. The federal government has said that they alleged in May that something is coming from some multilateral, organization that they're going to try to discredit the elections and all of that. But whether we should also be able to draw the line between politics and, reality in some cases. But, guys, where I would want us to go in all of this is to look at the Constitution, how constitutional our actions are. INEC is made up of Nigerians. If INEC did it right, Nigerians did it right. If INEC didn't do it right, Nigerians didn't do it right. Let's not forget that. Let's not just say, okay, it's INEC. INEC is not a foreign organization. It's a Nigerian organization made up of Nigerians, and some of them we eat and we dine together. So for me, let me take you to the Constitution. Section 24 of the Nigerian Constitution is very clear. Sub B, beg your pardon, says, it shall be the duty of every citizen, that's under the duties of the citizen, to help to enhance the power, prestige, and good name of Nigeria, defend Nigeria and render such national service as may be required. So whatever you do at any given time, ask yourself, how does it enhance the power, prestige, and good name of Nigeria? How does it help you to defend Nigeria? And how is it a national service, whether you're protesting for or against? Is Nigeria in view?
And on the strength of that, Ayo, we can ask INEC about how its conduct of the exercise enhanced Nigeria in that way, in line with Section 24.
Goes
and
back to the same question.
All the other agencies that also assisted in the conduct of the
It goes back to the same question. Whatever you do as a Nigerian, does it enhance? Does it help to defend the nation? If you can say yes, then go ahead. But if it defends your pocket more, your interests more, then who are you? Chamberlain.
Well, I am with New Telegraph this morning. That's where I'm starting off with here today for the paper review, and it's on the tax policy review. That's their lead story. Tinubu signed executive orders, suspends 5% duty on telecoms, others. The First Finance Act to September 1 reverses Buhari's import taxes on cars, plastics, others. Says FG improving on tax collection, not imposing new ones. Decision good for investors. OPS foresees early economic growth. Importers fret as new import duty on cargo clearance increases from 589 naira to 799 naira per dollar. Okay, so there you go. And then I also see some stories here about Senate to probe Kano Abuja airport concession. And, you know, this had generated some response some time ago. In fact, when that was going on, several people in that industry also did comment. And then for the census, you get to see here, Tinubu urges NPC to be prudent, produce credible, reliable data. So that's part of the census, you know. Did you hear how much they said they have spent? I think about 100 billion naira.
Already.
And
they're asking for about 225 billion.
What in the world? What do you mean? 100 billion naira?
Yep.
I was a little surprised though when I heard it, and I thought they hadn't even started. It's not even been conducted. So it means all that money they spent, what? Down the where?
Well, as I said, it was capacity building,
look,
basically for planning.
But there has to be some real questions. I mean, have we even ever had a real accurate census? If not, why not? Why should we believe this one will be any different? I mean, there are several questions. And sometimes, you know, this question about different IDs, and several people say, look, if it's a proper census, should we include ethnicity, religion, political ideology, if the census enumeration questionnaire and things like that to get real data, credible data, because I mean that's what this is about, credible data. So from there on you can build and not just estimate, but who knows. That is New Telegraph this morning.
And Daily Trust picks up on that suspension or executive order by the president. Tinubu suspends 5% telecom, vehicle import taxes, others. That's what they lead with as well. And see the captions. Issues 4 executive orders, defers Finance Act. Orders would moderate inflation, that's Manufacturing and others are speaking there. Center seeks electricity tariff, food price regulation. Page 4 will give you more details on that and talk about suspension of things. Traders at the maize market in Pape, Abuja yesterday, they're not bothered about the executive orders. All they want is let's just get the corn and move from here. That's a picture on the front page of the Daily Trust, just to make the ends meet and get something to eat. But below that, scramble for committees hots up as Akpabio Abbas compile list. Page 10. So the intrigues continue in the National Assembly. We'll still hear some more. No head finish. We're not done hearing and observing from a distance this time. Police to play football match with repentant thugs in Kanu. Wow. Please, how do you measure repentance? I'm just asking. You don't.
I'm not the police, please.
Muyiwa Dejobi, can you please tell us how you measure?
Where's it been though? Okay,
I don't know. Tell us how you measure repentance. It's on page 16 anyway. And INEC files charges against suspended Adama Arek. Yes, that story broke yesterday. INEC saying they're ready to go to court. 6-count charge. It's on page 11. You get more details. Senate probes Abuja Kano Airport's concession by Buhari government is on page 18. You see the process. And yeah, we're talking process there, right? And we're wondering why observers are commenting on our elections. They're talking about process as well. Process is important.
But Nigerians have commented several times on processes.
Yeah. So why are there protests about this particular
maybe
comment?
they see things differently, so...
Okay. Diphtheria, Nigeria records 80 deaths in 7 states. FCT, that's NCDC. That's health report there. We all need to be a bit more health conscious. Please, the fact that the pandemic is over doesn't mean you lose your the care you give to or the attention you pay to your health and your environment. Please be careful. NCDC, check page 3 for details of that. 1.5 million girls enrolled in 6 northern state schools in 10 years. That's coming from UNICEF, page 5. And the dollar video, APC kicks as anti-graft agency summons Ganduje. It's on page 3. And we'll leave it there for Daily Trust.
And flip to this Nigeria newspaper. It also trails on the drama in the Senate. As a matter of fact, that's how it chooses to caption the big headline, drama as Senate probes Buhari's airport concession project. Calls for review of Malam Aminu Kano International Airport 30 years franchise. 30 years. Yes, you heard it correctly. 30 years franchise. Others says exercise not done in public interest. Well, after the big question mark on the launch of Air Nigeria, I guess there's also need for scrutiny of the other investments in
We're not there
airport infrastructure.
We have not gone to the Nigeria Air yet.
Nigeria Air.
Let's start with the airports first.
With the airports.
One by one.
But they're all related one way or the other, executed by the same ministry.
Nota said the other time that, look, let's not talk about the money that EU contributed. Let's talk about the reports. They are related, yes, but one by one. Okay. We'll get into that. Don't worry. You see,
how did the Senate and House of Reps describe the launch of Air Nigeria?
I don't remember.
You don't? Okay, let's leave it there and move to other stories. MPC seeks additional 225.2 billion naira to conduct national census. 225, and it says it's already spent 100 billion naira. Well, let's hope that all of these data will be harmonized.
Well, just to be clear,
when the census is conducted,
the work has started. Although, as you said the other time behind the camera, the real count hasn't been done, but some enumeration, some background work has already been done. And quite a lot of work, actually. I think they have had like 2 or 3 rounds of going around the different parts of the country, mapping areas, mapping houses, and all of that. But for me, the process is extremely important. They call it the mother of all data. And if you're going to spend 5-10 minutes with me, people should begin from now to know, even before the president proclaims the new date, what are the questions they're going to be asked. If people don't know about this process in good enough time, it is natural that they resist. They will push back. So if this is going to be credible, as Chamberlain and Neota said the other time, people need to be a part of that. For people to be a part of it, they need to know what to do. They need to know what you're going to be asking them so that they can divulge all information. And then you want them to be where they reside, fine. But you need to educate them as to why.
Absolutely. Those questions are valid, Ayo. But for me, what's more important is what we do with this data. What's the essence of collecting data? It's for economic planning and, you know, all the other related issues. For instance, also combating crime. We have the NIN data. We have, you know, the data from the registration for the 2023 general elections. But what have we done with this data? We even have the BVN, bank verification number. How have we harmonized this data for the combat of crime?
That's the crucial thing, the harmonization of all data.
Yeah.
They say this is the mother of all data. Let's hope that all of the harmonization will
be done. Well, the last check on this Nigeria is just beside the nameplate above. Tinubu signs 4 executive orders to curb multiple taxations. What does that mean for you? We'll be asking that question later on the program. Let's leave it there for This Nigeria.
And flip to the Vanguard newspaper this morning, which is also leading with Tinubu's action. Tinubu suspends Finance Act, halts 5% excise tax on telecoms. Stories on page 5. President committed to reviewing complaints about multiple taxes, says Alaki. Our aim is to increase productive activities, not taxing poverty. Scribe to Adedeji. NECA excited, asks for more. Oliver Twist. I'll relieve Nigerian businesses of undue burden. It will relieve Nigerian businesses of undue burden. That's subscribed to Nasima. And financial analysts appraise spillover impacts. Find all of that on the inside pages this morning. Several other stories, as you can see, it's a banner headline on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. But let's quick look at, we were talking about the sit-at-home thing yesterday. Security operatives in show of force beef up security. Police presence increases in Enugu. We won't tolerate any breach of peace in Abia. Now, has there ever been any probe of all of the sit-at-home and all the people who are involved in this process? I don't even think we are well aware of the impact, the negative and contrary impact of all these sit-at-home all these years. How many days have been lost to businesses? You know what? That's not for
Where's
today.
the tiger? Where's the tiger?
Oh, well, maybe he's raring to go. Mr. and Mrs. very quickly, Mrs. is complaining bitterly. I'm just coming from the ATM. There was no money in your account. What happened? And Mr. Off-Cam says, I always tell you to discuss every matter with me before taking actions. Now, you let an ordinary machine tell you what to do. Ouch. That's the Vanguard newspaper today.
Okay, we hear you. And that team that was disbanded by the IGP in Edo for assaulting a citizen, it shouldn't just stop there. We should also face the music, actually. Leadership Friday is the next one here today. Respite for businesses as Tinubu moves to curb arbitrary taxation. Suspends Finance Act, telecom, vehicle import taxes, signs 4 executive orders. Experts list implications of president's decision. And then Twitter, look at this at the bottom strip. Twitter threatens to sue Meta over Threads app. It was a funny one, actually, because, having Twitter, Elon Musk should now know that, well, you can't take certain people for a ride anymore. They've got an option now, so they're all migrating. So there you go. That is it with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. We will be back in just a moment. Stay on with us.
President Bola Tinubu, in fidelity to the pledge to put Nigerians at the center of government policies, has signed the following executive orders. Executive Order 1. The Finance Act, Effective Date Variation Order 2023, has now deferred the commencement date of the changes contained in the Act from May 28, 2023 to September 1, 2023. This is to ensure adherence to the 90 days minimum advance notice for tax changes as contained in the 2017 National Tax Policy. Executive Order 2, the Customs Excise Tariff Variation Amendment Order 2023. This has also shifted the commencement date of the tax changes from March 27, 2023 to August 1, 2023, and also in line with the National Tax Policy. Order 3. The President has given an order suspending the 5% tax on telecommunication services as well as the excise duties escalation on locally manufactured goods. 4. Further to his commitment to creating a business-friendly environment, the President has ordered the suspension of the newly introduced green tax by way of excise tax on single-use plastics, including plastic containers and bottles. In addition, the President has ordered the suspension of import tax adjustment levy on certain categories of vehicles. Like I said earlier, any vehicle of 2,000 capacity, engine capacity and above, which the tax was imposed upon, has now been suspended.
All right, welcome back. Those two gentlemen are joining us this morning to give us their perspective of what they make of that particular announcement, as you heard from Mr. Alake. So, Mr. Gbenga Adebayo is the chairman, Association of Licensed Telecoms Operators of Nigeria, Alton. He joins us virtually. We also do have Abiola Sani, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria and the professor of commercial law specialty in Tax Law, University of Lagos. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Prof,
good morning.
Prof, let's start off with you. I mean, yes, there's always been that talk about us doing something about tax. And I know that the president, while contesting, did speak about not increasing the tax burden, expanding the tax net, and several other reforms which they planned to do. But with this particular announcement, which moved it, suspended it to September 1. What do you make of it?
Thank you very much. The president not only spoke in his campaign programs, his manifesto and all that, he also spoke during his inaugurations about what he will do and what he will not do. And he promised that he will do something conscious and deliberate about multiple taxation. So what we have seen in action, in my view, is a kind of damage control to arrest a very bad situation. So this is a time where those who drafted the Finance Act may not have any insight into what will be happening at this time. So now there is deregulation of fuel prices. There is unification of forex exchange rates, and we can see the impact on the economy and the common man. So this is a demonstration of political will from the highest level, in my view, to arrest the drift. So, and I thank the president for coming through for the stakeholders. And I also want to congratulate the stakeholders for being dogged. So I think it's a step in the right direction. But you must note that this is not only about suspension, it's also about postponement of commencement date, because the enforcement or the implementation of the Finance Act and the variation order are already problematic. Even those who should implement them were not aware of their existence until they surface on the social media spaces. So thank you.
So when you say that, yes, it's not just a suspension, but postponement of the commencement date, but there are several others who think, well, yes, that may be the case, but they would like to see that completely taken out, because to them, they think it amounts to multiple taxation, that we already have a lot of tax burden. So not just suspending or postponing, it should just be, that announcement should have been, for them, complete, just take it off completely. And then it makes more meaning and sense to them.
Well, you should bear in mind that we are yet to see the executive orders. So until we see the content, but from the snippets we have seen on the media, there is a postponement of the commencement date, one of two laws. The first is the Finance Act to 1st of September. The second one is excise duties variation order to 1st of August. While stakeholders may actually clamor for their total abolition. So I think what we have now offers some reprieve. Bear in mind that this is a new administration that is just settling. There is no Minister of Finance in place. I think this is a measure or a strategy to buy time, to consult and see what they can do. So I think it's a half measure that gives some relief. There are aspects of it that should be totally thrown away. You know, I am not a fan of the excise on telecom because clearly that is double taxation. But the aspect of green tax offers some promise. But the issue is, how do we go about it? I don't think we have set the best foot forward in this regard. So it seems the focus is on revenue, and that is not how green or environmental taxes work. You know, because they use a combination of stick and carrot. You encourage stakeholders, businesses, households to embrace environmentally friendly activities and actions, while you also punish those who are polluting the environment and those who are actually reversing the gains in that space. So I don't think at this time in point, we can expect a holistic abolition. Ultimately, it may lead to that after the new administration have taken time to actually understand what is on ground, because this is an inherent problem.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Adebayo on this one, because that tax component, of course, it will be interpreted differently. But while you tell us what the sector thinks about this, could you also tell us what it means for the telecom subscriber here? Because, of course, you know, many of them want to see some sort of cut, and they think that this might just be a window to that demand of theirs to ensure improved services and in terms of the ability to use a lot more data at cheaper cost. So go ahead. Well, what does this mean for that sector?
Thank you. We also, as an industry, welcome the suspension of the excise tax on telecom services. I must also add that we join in commending Mr. President for this kind consideration. But it goes to say that on record, the previous administration, former Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, had actually made a case to the past president asking for exemption of the telecom sector from that tax. And we have on record that an approval was granted to that effect. So our sector was actually exempted from that tax. So, but when the new administration came in, we started hearing about it again. So what the executive order that the president signed yesterday has done is to uphold the waiver that was granted to the sector. That being said, we had said earlier, and among other things, that the burden of collection of the 5% extra tax will be on the telecom operators, but the weight of the tax itself will be on the subscribers. Because we had said to government that we currently apply 7.5% VAT on every services offered. If the 5% tax is introduced, it will go to 12.75, and that will have implication on the cost of service delivery to end users. So as an industry, we welcome it, but really and truly, it should have been a burden on the subscribers. And we also think that it will increase the cost of services. We think that it will deny access to many people. In this regard, we think the suspension is good, but we feel that a total abolition of this will be in the best interest of the industry and the subscribers. We say so because as a sector, we face over 39 taxes and levies across the country. Some of them are captured in the statute, a number of them are not captured in any statute. Quite a number of them are repeated, but at federal and state levels, and it increases costs of providing services to the end users. A number of them are also passed on to the subscribers. So when we talk about the issue of high cost of service provision or high end user prices, it's actually part of the component of the pricing. It's the issue of multiple taxation on the services that we provide. So we do welcome this, but we think for greater good, government should consider the total abolition of that 5% excise tax. And also, further to that is that there's a need to address this issue of multiple taxation that we face as an industry. We think it is not sustainable. We think it is contrary to the will of progress. And as Mr. President has promised that he will look at all issues of multiple taxation, we think that our sector should be one of those sectors where issues of the taxes that we face, over 39 of them across the country, should be addressed.
Okay, Professor Sani, this matter of the executive orders, yes, indeed, multiple reactions from different quarters as regards the impact it will have on the people and the economy. But then if we do remember, the conversation even before now had been that taxes were going to go up because the nation needs to generate to generate income. Nigeria's debt profile is up there, and it's scary to some economists who had looked at it and examined it, and they think that taxes will help make a difference. Now, with this executive order, as you said, we've not really seen that executive order to get the breakdown of it. Would it not impede the revenue generation drive of this administration, seeing that there's so much to do with little or nothing to work with?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a clear demonstration of proper understanding of how to generate or how not to generate. Government is looking for new money, no doubt, but if we do not approach it the right way, it's going to be counterproductive. And this is why we must give kudos to a new administration who recognize that despite the parlous state of the economy, despite this desperate need for revenue, there is a way we will not go about it. And this is a window for them to look at it, look at the numbers, look at the advocacy, and then begin to understand it, disaggregate them, and then come to a firm decision. So clearly, references were made to the national tax policy, and I find that very exciting because the national tax policy is like the chapter 2 of the Constitution relating to the taxation space. A commitment is already made by government on what they will do and what they will not do. And the president said clearly that he will address the problem of double taxation. And this is not the first time he has said that. Okay, but he has now backed it up with demonstration of political will by doing something. So I believe if we tax right, we will get even more money on sustainable basis. The tax policy that references were made to already pointed to how this can be achieved. And this will be achieved when you have a wholesome reform. Without a reform of the system, telecom will be in problem. The scenario is even worse in some other sector. So, and we keep talking about multiplicity of taxes. This is perhaps the first time that we are doing something conscious about it from the top. And I want the president to follow that through and also deal with multiple layers of income taxes at the federal, and they are growing. And if you look at the Finance Act, there is a new dimension that we have never seen before. So there is a levy on importation from outside Africa to finance financial commitment of some international organizations by Nigeria. This is not a sustainable way to go, and it's very worrisome. So nothing short of a holistic approach can actually deliver the much needed reform.
Prof, when you talk about holistic approach, yes, you mentioned the multiple levels of taxes that there are. Meanwhile, there are some other areas that are not even taxed enough, so to speak. For instance, the area of housing tax. There are those who argue that if we look at the amount of houses as they are and begin to tax them, that might reduce a lot of weight on or reduce the level of taxes that are placed on other areas of the economy. So let's look at that holistic approach to taxation that you talked about. To gain an inroad, where should we even be looking to start?
To housing tax? Is that what you said, Newton?
Mentioned housing tax as one area that some have argued that should be looked at in terms of raising the tax revenue or raising revenue.
You mean
from
property tax?
Property tax, so to speak, yes.
Okay.
But I was saying that in a holistic, when you talk about holistic approach to taxing, to raising revenue through taxes, where should the inroad be?
If you do not have a structured economy or system where each level of government is able to mobilize revenue to perform their functions, you are going to have a system whereby some level of government in desperate need of revenue will go about it in a wrong way. Property tax is a matter for the local government. But there are practical problems relating to local government leveraging that tax. So some states have come in, but the issue is whether the state intervention is sustainable. Because if property tax works, we should see development across Nigeria. We should see it in our various villages. And we have to make a conscious decision whether we want a government at that level or we want administrative units. What I propose in all my advocacy is let us strengthen the local government, strengthen the state government, and also strengthen the federal so that they could be service delivery centers and they could do excellently the responsibility assigned to them. A situation where one level grabs all the power, leaving the other levels in a very poor state will not deliver. It's like a head of a home who gets all the money and then do whatever he likes with it, neglecting the household and the children. So we must have a holistic approach, and it exists. It's already in the various recommendations. Let us have a system whereby something comes directly to each level so that all this irresponsible fiscal behavior, especially at the local government and at the state, will stop.
All right.
And until we have that conversation, we will not be able to address this problem. It's good we have executive orders, but they are short interim measures. And I hope those who are driving this reform will be fast-sighted and then look beyond the immediate problems.
Okay. Prof, let me just take this to Benga Adebayo. When you talked about the level, you talked about 39 other taxes that the telecom industry has to deal with going forward, and this is transferred more or less to the consumers. With this order, yes, you guys are excited, but you're looking at how to break it all down. But what structure is there in the telecom industry? I mean, Prof talked about having a structure that can work, a working structure that would ensure that these things are seen through and not haphazardly. But is there a structure in the telecom industry that can help to reduce the taxes as they are and so reduce the weight on the consumers at the end of the day?
Yes, we do have structures. Issues of defined taxes that are clearly listed in the Constitution and the regulations are not the problem. The problems are those definitions that are not under any tax header, such as effluent discharge levy, right-of-way renewal levy, environmental sanitation levy, diesel storage levy, and a number of them that have no relationship of bearing to telecom services at all, which in most cases are enforced at state levels and at local government level. And like Prof said, the behavior of local government tax collectors, you can only imagine it, completely at variance with the will of progress. You have cases where local government tax collectors will go to lock up telephone sites. They will go to telecom offices, seize their tools, arrest the staff, harass them, intimidate them in the name of collection of taxes and levies. And at the end of the day, it just makes operations very difficult. So the problem is not in the taxes and levies that are clearly defined and are listed either in our licenses or in the regulation or in the laws of the federation. The taxes are the problem are those ones that state often has to generate in the name of IGR. And I think that more than that, we are saying government should look at telecom sector as a national economic support infrastructure and provide us with the required requirements in terms of critical national infrastructure protection and isolate us from some of these unacceptable behavior of tax collectors at state and local government levels. We have cases where you bring an approval from the federal government, a state governor says to you, I don't report to Abuja, that's an Abuja approval, it's not applicable in my state. And it's in very many respects. So our issue is not an issue of taxes that are clearly listed and defined. There are a number of them that occur at federal level that the state will insist again that they must have the same levy or the same tax on us. For example, environmental impact assessment. A telecom site is a telecom site. It's domiciled at a particular location. The rule and the law says that Federal Ministry of Environment will be responsible for reasons of environmental impact assessment on telecom site. So we will do EIA assessment with the Federal Ministry of Environment. The State Ministry of Environment will come against us. The local government Ministry of Environment will come against us on the same site, in the same location. So how do you explain that? So these are the similar kind of problems that we face at different states, and that makes just operations extremely difficult and makes the cost of service provision very, very high. So we do have structures to pay and to collect, but the reality of the matter is that those that are not well defined, that are arbitrary in nature, are the problematic ones, and that makes the majority in the number.
Well, Prof, let me ask you, Prof. These taxes come with different names sometimes. Levies, duties, licenses, taxes, the others. You teach taxation for a living. But then the investors, such as Mr. Adebayo, who just spoke now, have their own issues and perspectives to all of these things. The states have their own way of doing things. The federal government have their own way of doing things. And the local governments, in some cases, have their ways of doing things. There was a day we were speaking with an individual who said, look, between somewhere in the north and south here, truckers have to pay something in the region of 200 levies. There was a video that made the rounds last year of someone just opening one page upon the other, and the taxes usually come with, of course, receipts in heaps. So this order of the federal government, this executive order of the federal government, how do you see it percolating all across board to the local governments, the state governments as well, so that while the federal government is saving the investors from one end, they are not being locked down by on another end? Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a big relief, which must be complemented with some other rapid actions. Because in a federal system, each level of government, to a large extent, can exercise sovereign powers within its territory. And if we go that route, the problem will be exacerbated. The problem will worsen. So there must be cooperation between all levels of government. State government must recognize the need for the local government to have sufficient revenue and then agree on what those revenue will be. So all the charges masquerading as levies, they are more or less taxes because there is disproportionality in the level of services being provided and what government is asking for. So you have a system whereby this level of governments are indirectly trying to exert their fiscal power and also get their pound of flesh from businesses. And it's unfortunate, the soft targets are always businesses. And once they distrain a business, there is nothing that business can do until it pays, either wholly or partly. And this is part of the malady in the system. So that is why we must go beyond the current gain.
But Prof, the question will be how? I know that we have a National Executive Council, which the Vice President heads, and from time to time they sit down with governors to talk about these things. So one wonders how that will happen. The previous federal government and the chairman of that committee under which was the former Vice President Osinbajo, championed an ease of doing business program with the PEBEC for quite some time. But it seems that the ease of doing business thing just happened within a pocket of states, and it wasn't quite received or embraced by everyone. But so the question then is, how? Do we really need an order to champion the cause of Nigeria through the states?
Well, you have to recognize that states have important roles to play. So the way this can actually work is to have leadership at the federal level and at the state level. The president has said something specifically about tax reform. Let the state also do the same. Let the local government also do the same. references were made to the national tax policy, and that policy document says reform the system. You reform the system by, first of all, establishing a study group. This is a technical aspect, a technical subject. Put a body of experts together and look at the system and then define the terms of reference that they will look at and come with recommendation. So in the areas where we have made quantum leap in our tax system, they were preceded by study. I've not seen any systemic study in the last 15 years. All the Finance Act that we have been having, and we've been making a movement forward and then 2 steps backward. So we need to have an organized study group with a realistic time frame that will come with recommendation. If you look at the activities of the last administration, the presidency was concerned that interventions were even coming from the center to alleviate the problem of the local government. Some can interpret it as political, but the reality is that we need to do something about the government at that level so that people at that level can also, because businesses are located in local governments. Dangote Refinery is located in a local government. So if they wake up and they behave in an irresponsible way, there will be crisis. So that is why there must be a study that is comprehensive. And each state should also do the same thing. I want to hear states do more. Lagos State used to lead in this regard, but maybe for political reasons, they became quiet. But now that politics is off the table, I think we can go back to some of this heavy lifting part of the reform and start doing it.
Indeed, Professor Sani, there's a need to complement, the suspension of these taxes with all other types of reforms, which is where I'm headed. Let me come to you now, Mr. Adebayo. Looking at, let's take a close look at the green tax, for instance, which is to, help Nigeria comply with her commitment to the climate law on mitigation and adaptation, i.e., it caused it to levy tax on vehicles with 2,000 capacity and then 4,000 capacity, 2% here, 4% there. But can we begin to look at, an executive order, a similar executive order in the reverse, wherein we're saying that, okay, let's patronize locally manufactured goods. For instance, the locally assembled cars, for instance, and have that done both at the federal and the state government levels, walking the talk and curbing our appetites for, imported vehicles. What are your thoughts on that? And perhaps you could also make other recommendations in that regard.
First, I think the green tax will work. It will assist in a number of ways. But the more worrisome part of it is that the federal government and the state government, many times they are at variance with each other. The behavior of the state government and the federal government, they like, one day the federal government is saying something, the next day the state government is saying something completely different to that. And also, you approach a state commissioner for a certain issue, he says to you, my governor who have given you a waiver on this subject matter has also given me revenue target. So what does he want me to do? So, and these are disparities that we are seeing in government administration. That's why, as Prof said, I think all the players must come together. When these players do come together, we must handshake and work towards one common objective in national interest. Otherwise, Abuja will be saying something, the state will be saying something else, and the local government will be doing something completely different. Now, it's good to know that the local government do have their own rights and powers under the law, but these local government people are not there. You don't find them there. You find a few tax collectors, a few revenue collectors wearing yellow jackets in local government, but you don't find the local government administrator. He's either in the state capital or sitting in Abuja. And these are people who are supposed to oversee what goes on at that level We are also here that some of them report to the governor, so whatever the governor asks them to do is what they do. So quite a number of things are disjointed on this issue of tax administration and collection, and we think that the federal government needs to be firm in whatever orders it has given to ensure that it's implemented across board. Otherwise, we are just going to be making administrative exercises. What we are seeing in telecoms is very concerning to the extent that we are seen as an extractive industry. Everybody wants something from the sector, and the implication of this is that we are unable to look at price review in whatever form, because every day something new is confronting the telecom operators, from issues of taxes and levies to closure of sites to seizure of equipment to prevention of network expansion and integration and all of that. And being a sector that is critically sensitive to the economy, we think that we need more protection than what we currently get. So this issue of green tax, yes, it's something that we should talk about, we should work towards. However, unless the government at different level handshake with each other, and somebody has to receive the feedback from the local government level. Abuja cannot say something, and somebody following the local government is doing something completely different. If that is happening, there should be a feedback mechanism to say what we're asking them to do is not being implemented. And there should be sanctions where there are no compliance with federal government directives.
Well, we can only hope that, the federal and state government officials will not work at cross purposes, must make what we earn, make what we use and use what we make, campaign from some time back. Let me come to you, Professor Sani. Let's talk about, plug-in revenue leakages. There was a time where a former customs boss said Nigeria was making about 5 billion naira daily from the border closure. If we do not plug the revenue leakages, and government still has that concern about, revenue, to do so very much, but very little. Do you think it would inevitably lead to government also resorting to borrowing, which is another concern?
Okay, please permit me to say something about green tax before I come to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you don't introduce green tax by picking on one or two items. It should be embraced in a holistic manner. And like I said, there are players in that sector, for example, single-use plastic sector, the plastic sector, who are also into recycling. Some are even ahead of government. How are we going to encourage that? How are we going to bring more people into that bracket? So it's not just about bringing one item on board. We should look at it in a more comprehensive manner so that we can then deliver on the desirable objectives of green taxes. Having said that, plugging revenue leakages is an imperative if this government must go far. And I'm happy that one of the appointments made by Mr. President was to appoint a special advisor on revenue. Perhaps if not for the existence of that office, people will not know who to turn to at a time like this, because the Minister of Finance is not there, and then there is a vacuum. So I think in a way, the Chief of Staff to the President, the essay on revenue must have done some positive actions by taking this directly to the President. And in the news, we have heard about the proposed merger of revenue agencies. Clearly, the National Tax Policy recommended or prescribed that there should be a merger of FRS and Nigerian Customs Services, because this is the leading practice across the world, even in Africa. So I think in that way, a lot of revenue will be plugged. Then there are also revenue domiciled in the MDAs. Most MDAs do not actually comply with the tax law. And then because they are headed by political heavyweights, the tax authority may not be in a position to actually move against them the way they will move against private individuals. And then there are some new economy that we need to look at. The digital economy is there. The lottery and gaming is there. Some of these things taking place online. So, but they require cooperation between the federal and the state. So pardon me if I'm sounding like a broken record. If we do not reform the system, then we'll be coming back and forth. And that is why we need to fix the operating system of the Nigerian tax system. The operating disk, we need to do something about it and set it on a path of irreversible progress.
Yeah, let's manage our time. Very quickly, let me come to you, Mr. Adebayo. The tax, let's review the tax on excise duty. It's emerged that, traditionally, Nigeria does not tax services, but rather we tax goods, i.e., that tax also on tobacco and alcohol. Since there'll be wider consultations ahead of the new September 1 implementation date, what are your recommendations on, the approach to take in the implementation of this particular tax, or outright repealing of it, since it's a service, it's not a good, in the hope that it does not set a precedent in the future for imposing excise on services rather than goods?
Our position and recommendation as an industry is that government should consider total abolition of this 5% excise tax. It's strange, it's alien. We offer social services. We don't deliver hardware. We don't trade in hardware. We don't do importation. It's a service that supports the life of people. We think that government should not tax subscribers to the bones, and therefore this should be completely abolished. For the sake of the digital economy, which Mr. President has also spoken about, for the sake of the progress of the industry and stability of the operating environment that we have, we think that the 5% excise tax should be completely eliminated from telecom services. That's our position.
Yeah, Ayo has some questions.
Well, still with you, Mr. Adebayo, Dr. Oyedele had said something as well, that, look, this thing may just come back. He said, in response to this order of the president, there could be a possible lifting of the suspension of the tax in the near future, especially if some of the low revenue yielding multiple taxes payable by operators in the sector are repealed. How do you respond to that?
Well, if they bring it back in the future, we're going to pass it on to the subscribers. It's as easy as that. We are just to act as collection agents. We'll collect on behalf of government and remit to government. So as I said earlier in the beginning of this interview, the burden of collection will be on us as network operators, but the weight of the tax itself will be on the Nigerian public and the subscriber. And I don't think that the government wants to inflict more tax burden on Nigerians. Okay.
Well, Prof, so here we are in all of these, and you have talked repeatedly about the need to re-engineer the laws and all of those. I have taken a look at the 1998 tax and levies approved list for collection, decree of 1998. I don't know, let me believe that you would help us know how it has been adjusted to become a law as opposed to a decree. And quite a number of very, very interesting laws right there listed, including cattle tax, and a number of others like that, that so many people will be wondering, they didn't even know such things existed. About tax education, do you think we have it? In that same vein, speak to the micro, small and medium enterprises, whether or not they're even aware of the taxes they're supposed to pay, taxes, levies, charges, duties, whatever it is, by whichever name they come. Tax education.
Cattle tax, to my knowledge, does not exist anywhere in Nigeria. It used to be the backbone of the economy of the North, because the owners of cattle were like the high net worth in those days. And what that speaks to the essence of taxation. You go after those who have more. But what we have in Nigeria, unfortunately, is the reverse. So the decree, which is now an act, Cap T2, LFN 2004, was an intervention or initiative to arrest double taxation in Nigeria. It was an initiative of JTB. But unfortunately, it has had partial success. So in 2015, the Federal Minister of Finance actually wanted to do something about it and did something. But rather than reducing the number of taxes and levies, the number grew. And part of the issues that Mr. Adebayo spoke to came directly from that modification order. As a matter of fact, the modification order of 2015 became such a big problem that it was challenged in court, the Federal High Court, Lagos, by the hospitality sector. And Faji J, in a well-considered judgment, declared the modification order null and void. So we have had intervention, but if they are ad hoc and they are not well thought out, they are not going to deliver. If you see this as a crisis situation, you must actually address it from the bottom, from the root, not in an ad hoc manner and then impulsive responses. I'm sure the drivers of the Finance Act didn't think through this, because how, for God's sake, will you be bringing holistic care reform into sectors as important as manufacturing and all that, and they will have no clue about the emergence of that policy? Is that bad? By the time government listen to them, know their concern, I think some of these issues will be appropriately addressed. But then final thing, the service tax, the new service tax is not on telecom alone. Telecom was just emphasized, it's on all services. And to me, that is double taxation. It's like trying to introduce an increment of VAT through excise tax. Excise tax is on locally produced goods. That is the meaning of excise in Nigeria. So government should forget totally about the idea of increasing VAT through excise tax. If you want to increase VAT to whatever rate, let us discuss. Let us run the number. Let us see the effect it's going to have on the economy and the common man through proper study. Then we know what to do about it. So it's not just about telecom. And that is very worrisome to me.
All right, we'll have to thank both of you for coming on. Abiola Sani is the Senior Advocate of Nigeria and the Professor of Commercial Law, University of Lagos. We've also had Mr. Gbenga Adebayo, Chairman, Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria, Alton. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we will be back in just a moment. Do stay on with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Today. Well, yes, indeed, talking about politics now. In the Senate, as you've seen that Senator Simon Mwakam joins us next. He's the minority leader in the House. He's of the PDP. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thank you.
So
Good morning, Nigeria.
How is it going on so far following your emergence?
Yeah, so far so good. We are out to commence our work as senators, and there is no problem in the Senate, as I know. Everything is moving well. We've been attending plenaries, and everybody is happy as far as I'm concerned.
But we also did read from Senator Garba Maidoki, representing Kebbi South, how he said that the party was not transparent to them, the senators there, about the emergence or selection of the officials who emerged. Have you reached out to him? What is his latest stance now? Has it changed?
Well, the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, as amended, Section 60, empowers the Senate to make laws or rules that will govern the affairs of the Senate. And it's based on that we make our Senate orders, and orders 27 Rule 1 is clear that the Senate shall nominate the minority leaders from the opposition parties. In this case, this Senate is unique in many ways because we have 7 parties and there are 6 opposition parties that made up the Senate. And these 6 opposition parties came together and nominated their leadership. And I was nominated as the Senate minority leader. In the issue of Senator Medoki, I don't think we have contravened any aspect of the law. this is politics. And I did say yesterday that I'm sorry I did not consult him, but I couldn't have consulted everyone because we are 50 in number in the opposition party. Quite a number of us were not around. Some went to Maka, some were in their various constituencies, you know, because a lot of us have court cases. And because of that, I couldn't have reached everybody. It is not only Medoki that I did not reach. There are quite a number of persons that I couldn't reach them by text because they were in their villages and their network was poor, and some I didn't even have their contact. So I don't know why he wants to make an issue out of this, but I know that he's an important person. He's also a senator. I don't see him less a senator than any other person, and he's not the only person that I did not consult. I consulted those that I was able to have access to them, those that I have their contacts. And I had said yesterday that he approached me on the floor of the Senate and demanded why is it that I did not consult him, that perhaps he would also give me his vote. But I said, I'm sorry, because I didn't consult everybody. So there's no problem with the issue of Senator Medoki.
Okay, but when he also did say that he and other senators were at the PDP National Secretariat on Monday over that same matter. And the party didn't even inform them. Then they didn't inform those in attendance at the meeting on the day that this was going to happen. So after you had demerged, how come all of those gaps existed? Not even just about you now, but even the larger party.
Well, I'm not in position to speak for the party. I was also in that meeting, but I stayed briefly. And the meeting was to tell the party to send a communication to the Senate that this should be the composition of the leadership. But as of that time, we had not agreed as members of the PDP. So it was impossible or very difficult for the party to have sent any communication to the Senate. And we left that meeting abruptly and everybody dispersed to his house. But the next day, of course, it is just incumbent on the Senate president to announce the leadership because he had already taken time to do that.
So when did the agreement happen, before the announcement?
Which of agreement?
You say you were in that meeting, but you had not agreed.
Yeah, there was no agreement anywhere. And our party chose not to send any communication. You recall in the 9th Assembly, the House of Representatives had an issue. The party went as far as sending a communication to Mr. Speaker, Abia Miller at that time, saying that this is the leadership of the minority parties. But the members themselves decided to follow the external rules of the House. You know, the provision that I've just read concerning the Senate.
Yeah.
That of the senator is Rule 27(1), which says that the minority leaders shall be nominated on the floor of the House by members of the political parties.
I understand that, but
so
you said you didn't have time to consult a lot of people, but you consulted some and you couldn't reach all the others.
Yep.
Meaning you had a little time for consultation.
Yep.
And this consultation, you knew at least before that announcement, way before that announcement. So when was this? When did you know?
Before the announcement? Mm-hmm. When did I know?
That you had been, put forward for that position?
Yeah. I started the consultation long time ago. Like I did say, some of my colleagues were not around. Some went on Hajj. Some have left for their various constituencies. And the consultation was for more than 2 weeks.
I thought you said that there was a meeting where they now decided that North Central now said that they had to choose you.
Yeah, that was okay. That was just the North Central said that after they discovered that in the arrangement or in the giving of positions to various sections of the country, the Northeast was represented, South-South, Southeast, and so on and so forth. But the North Central was changed completely. So at that level, after the North Central discovered that this is how the political arithmetic has gone, and that we have been changed. The meeting between us and the North Central Caucus was just, I think, 2 days. Yeah, 2 days to the pronouncement of the leadership of the House.
Sunday.
So it was on Sunday.
But he was in Secretariat on Monday.
Yes.
And still, no indication that anything had happened.
You mean Senator Medoki?
Yeah.
Of course, I told you I couldn't have even reached everybody at that time because this is politics. Sometimes you run to where you think you'll be able to get access to the person and his acceptance. And by this, I was just looking at how do I make 26 nominations, because we're 50. By the time I have 26, I'm home and dry. So, but it will interest you to know that I got 36. So it was difficult for me to follow everybody to his house. And I don't know why we should even make this issue of my colleague, Senator Medoki.
At least he knows he has to keep his phone on sometimes so that he can get messages moving forward in a lighter note.
Making, you said, you don't know, I'll have to make this, the issue of your colleague, a point for conversation. Indeed, that may not be a point for conversation, but you need a team to work with. I mean, you're 50,
I do.
50 senators.
And that is why I've apologized to him on the floor of the House. I told him that I'm sorry I did not consult you, and you are not alone. There are a few persons that I couldn't consult because I was unable to reach you. So please accept my apology and let's work as a family.
Okay, so, but as I said, 50 senators in the minority, but of that 50, you have all the other parties together with you. Yeah. So one will be looking at, okay, now that you've become the minority leader, there's a task ahead of you.
Yeah.
How is it going to work out? Would it benefit the people that you're there to represent? How would you be able to galvanize that entire structure of different political parties with different ideologies towards ensuring a vibrant Senate?
Well, as it is now, we are looking at Nigeria, not our political parties any longer. Our political parties have now become secondary. Our focus is the country. How do we move forward as a nation? What shall we do as senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to help, the administration of Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu? And those are the issues at our Senate and everything that we shall do. We don't have to look at ourselves as members of different political parties any longer. The focus, like I did say, is Nigeria, the success of Nigeria, the growth of Nigeria, development of Nigeria. How do we secure this country? Because we have a lot of security challenges. The fuel subsidy removal is giving untold hardship on the citizens. How do we legislate to make sure that at least there are palliatives for the common man to have some relief from all these issues? So,
in the looking for palliatives for the common man, Nigeria, before you came in the other segment, we were talking about the level of taxation of the telecom sector. He talked about 39 taxes that they have to deal with, and the weight of that is transferred to the consumers. That's the telecom sector. Yes, the manufacturing sector has its own level of taxes, and they transfer that again to the consumers. Now, in working to see the common man in Nigeria, as you say, get some kind of palliative vis-a-vis the fuel subsidy that's been removed. What are those laws and policies that you'll be looking to propose to, like, amend or change or streamline so that the weight of what's happening in all these different sectors of the economy doesn't come too heavy on the citizens?
Yeah, double taxation, I don't see it as something that is healthy. I think we must, as a country, remove this issue of double taxation. And unfortunately, like you did say, most of the taxes are turned back to the consumers. The producers, they don't have anything to lose, and that's why perhaps they have not also been complaining. But I believe the common man is now complaining. Apart from that, the minorities parties have come out with a legislative agenda that we intend to incorporate with the majority party, that's the APC. And one of the things we are considering as part of our legislative agenda as minority parties is to make sure that we make life bearable for the citizens of this country. And therefore, we are going to also legislate on how to remove this double taxation and also bring policies that will ameliorate the sufferings of the citizens of this country and remove, for example, the double taxation or the heavy taxes that is taken and placed on the heads of the consumers. The common man in Nigeria don't have that access to government. So, like in the villages, for example, if you go to the villages, the villagers do not even know that a government exists because, of course, if you go to an agrarian society, they buy fertilizers for themselves, they cultivate the land for themselves, they don't have access to free medical care, they don't have access to education and everything, they do it for themselves. So it's like the government is non-existent. Therefore, we should not also go ahead again to allow this untold hardship
Would you
to
be
reach
looking at
to them.
legislating towards reduction in the cost of governance?
Very well.
What approach would that be?
Of course. Like, let's take example, this double taxation thing. We will have to come out with a bill that will completely disagree and eradicate any means of double taxation. If you have tax, you pay your tax for once, and that is it. And the multiple taxation, of course, is what has led to also high cost of goods and services because the manufacturers, producers, yes, if this agency is taxing them, the federal government, the local government, and other bodies are forcing them to pay tax. In this case, they have to increase that money on whatever good or product they are bringing to the market. So we will, as legislators, in our legislative agenda as minority parties, we have agreed on that we must not allow any form of double taxation on...
So, the question I asked was cost of governance, cost of running government. Would the minority parties be looking at legislating towards that? Can we get the governors, can we get even the presidency to cut down the amount of money spent?
One of the things we're talking in that regards too is that from the legislators ourselves, this issue of salaries and allowances of the legislators, we don't intend in any way to negotiate for any addition on our salaries and allowances. And I think that is the starting point. We have to start with ourselves. So despite the fact that this fuel subsidy is there, of course, it's going to bring a multiplier effect on the cost of goods and services and so on and so forth. It will also affect the government, and it may likely lead to an increase in the cost of governance. But we must also strive, since Nigerians are going to bear the burden of the cost of removal of subsidy, we as government must also bear that cost. You know, Senator, we must reduce everything that has to do with ourselves.
Speaking about this cost of governance matter, and it's quite interesting because people say, well, yes, you said you need to start from yourselves and look at that. And then it just comes to mind that, wait a minute, the convoy of the president of the Senate, when people saw it, they said, is this the same country that we're talking about costing, people tightening their belt? And as though that was not enough, they then saw the convoy of the president when he got back to Lagos. Goodness, they thought, what is going on here? So are we really sure that both the Senate and the executive are looking inwards, saying, no, we have to actually show and not just talk about this by reducing what people see? Because when they see all of that, you're going to be feeling those cars massively. What's going on with that?
Yeah, people have criticized the convoy of the president, and but some people have come out to say, well, that convoy was not that of the president alone, because the president was in Lagos, there were governors there were ministers, former ministers, former governors, and quite a number of high dignitaries, and they were part of that convoy. And I don't think I have any comment to say about that at the moment. But that of the Senate president, at the moment, I don't see the convoy of the Senate president as an issue, because I've not seen him with a very long convoy, perhaps 4 or 5 cars with him, and sometimes in the company of the Deputy Senate President and perhaps other principal officers of the National Assembly. Of course, such things must be totally curtailed, because definitely the high cost of petrol now, you need to fuel those cars, and of course it will tell on the economy or on the spending of government. And therefore, we must reduce such things, such spendings, excessive spendings that will not have any impact. Whether we go with convoy or we don't go with convoy, it will not change our duties as legislators. So even me, honestly, I will advise that we as legislators, especially the principal officers, must live above board. We must do something, certainly that the citizens will see and say, yes, this is a different Senate. The Senate President have always said that the 10th Senate is a corrective Senate. We want to correct a lot of things. He has said that intermittently on the floor of the Senate, that this Senate is a corrective Senate. Therefore, as a corrective Senate, of course, we must do things contrary or differently from what our predecessors did. And that will also entail us trying to reduce the spending that we do to run the government.
All right, we'll be looking to see what happens, how many cars and cover what resources, perks are going to the principal officers and their colleagues as well. So all eyes will be on that to ensure that they walk the talk or put their money where their mouth is.
Thank you.
But speaking of which, with all of these positions for principal officers of the House, what do they actually do? Do they help you get more bills signed, benefit your constituencies more? What's the main difference, really?
With the principal officers?
Those positions that you occupy as principal officers of the Senate.
Of course, you need a system. You need some people to run the system. Like the minorities, we have, what is binding us as minorities. We are not in majority party. This is a Senate, but you still need somebody to check the order. And the minorities, their role is just to give the majority party a credible opposition. We must not say yes, yes, yes to every policy that they will bring, especially if that policy is inimical to the progress and development of Nigeria. If such a policy is just to enhance the growth and development of the majority party, we must resist such things. If government is bringing, or the Senate or Mr. President has transmitted to us, like the issues of the loans that were collected in the 9th Senate, some were just approved without knowing the implication. Okay, you are taking this loan. You have to explain to us, what is this loan aimed to achieve? And we must insist, too, that the loans, what you use in doing with that loan should be able to pay back the loan. So we must insist on changes. And then these principal officers, of course, their duty is to see you galvanize the people, you bond together, and you're able to speak with one voice to stand against any policy that is not a progressive policy, anything that will not bring progress, development, and peaceful coexistence of this country. We need these leadership to bring the people together so that we can move ahead. Let's wind down with this one, Senator. When you say that the President of the Senate always says this Senate will be a corrective one from what happened previously, is that a different way of saying this Senate will not be a rubber stamp like the previous one, probably? Well, I'm not too sure if that Senate was a rubber stamp, but that we know that there are certain things the last Senate did, which honestly Nigerians were not happy. Like, I've made an example on the approval of loans. These loans were approved arbitrarily. They didn't ask questions. They didn't investigate as to what is the aim of this loan. How is it going to benefit the common man in Nigeria? But the loans were approved. And some of the loans, of course, we recall that in one of the clauses that was in the agreement of the loan, Nigeria was supposed to some sort of give out its own sovereignty as a result of that loan. So those are issues that we must be critical upon this time around to check and make sure that no loan will be in the future impede the sovereignty of Nigeria. So, all right. Okay, well, at least we all know that in this country, the average person, they buy their own diesel, they provide their own water, they pay for their own security, those who live in communities like that. They even buy their own transformer, the cables to supply electricity. They're like,
their own local governments.
Yes.
So now that you say the Senate will do things to benefit the average Nigerian, they will be looking to see that you actually do all of these things that you have said so that they will be better for it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on, and we wish you and your colleagues all the best.
Thank you.
Your duty. Senator Simon Marcom is a minority leader in the Senate and is a member of the PDP. We're back in a moment in Lagos.
Well, most certainly the situation in Abia State, of course, still talking politics, is another issue of concern because those who believe that all may not be well in the Abia State House of Assembly now. Last Friday, the Speaker, Emmanuel Emeru, announced the names of new principal officers with no PDP lawmaker making the list. Of course, the PDP is the majority party in the House, and that is why that is an issue. A member representing the PDP in the House rejected that position and maintained that the PDP remained the majority party. A number of issues to raise on that one, particularly from the vice chairman of the PDP in the state said, and I quote, "Members of the Labour Party who are in the minority in the House were unilaterally appointed by the Labour Party as majority leader and deputy majority leader of the House, respectively, even when the PDP, as of right, had officially written to the House nominating its members for the positions reserved for the majority party." That's the vice chairman of Abia State PDP, Abraham Amar, saying that one. Well, two individuals join us this morning to have a conversation around this, and both of them joining us virtually. Honorable Godwin Adiele, member representing Okwa West State constituency, Abia State House of Assembly, as well as Ferdinand Ekoma, who is special advisor to Governor Oti on media and publicity, appearing on behalf of the Labour Party. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Honorable, let me begin with you. How did this come to be in the first place, Honorable Adiele? Because one would have expected that being the majority party, it would only have been natural that they would take the cake and use their numbers to sway things. What exactly happened?
Thank you. Good morning, moderator. Like you just said, normally the parliament has their rules, and Abia State Parliament is not an exception to that. We have a house rule in Abia State House of Assembly, and that house rule is a guide to whatever operations or whatever rules we want to make. And for the 7th Assembly, we have a house rule that we used, which definitely was supposed to start the 8th Assembly. But unfortunately, when the 8th Assembly was to be inaugurated, they jettisoned it. And we came to know that they want to use non-ranking members to produce the speaker and the deputy speaker. And that happened. We protested, and at the long run, we left it. Our House Rule Order 2, subsection 8, says, in starting a new house, there shall be a nomination from the ranking members. But this rule was not adhered to. The Labour Party just did what they liked and then announced the speaker and the deputy speaker.
Well, on that one, just a quick one before you go on. Again, I asked the question, how did that come to be? The PDP was certainly in the House at the time, and I would expect that it's the clerk of the House that will administer the entire process. So the House has 24 members, the PDP has 11 members, and a number of other parties occupy one seat or the other. So at what point did the Labour Party, as you said, do what they wanted when the clerk of the House expectedly is not a member of the Labour Party?
when we came for the inauguration, after the proclamation, the clerk of the house was the officiate, and he called for nominations, and nominations was made. He called for further nominations, which we raised our hands, and he did not take it. And then he concluded that there was no further nominations, and announced that the one nomination is returned unopposed. That was what the clerk did. It was on the newspaper pages. It was on media. We objected to that, but at the end, we allowed it. Now, as a party, having majority 11, we have 11 in the House, PDP members. The Labour Party has 10. The YPP has 2, while the APC has 1. And then we said, since we have the majority in the House, we ought to produce the speaker. But when that was overruled, we allowed it. Now we came to the majority issues of the House. Are you hearing me?
Go ahead.
Should I go on?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Good. Now, the crisis now that we are facing currently is about the pronouncement of the majority leader, the deputy majority leader, the other principal officers, chief whip, and the deputy chief whip, which ultimately is supposed to be taken by the majority party in the House, which is PDP. But rather than doing so, the speaker now decided to announce, despite the fact that PDP has given them names of the people to occupy these principal offices, he went on to announce other names that was not what we agreed at the executive. And we said no, that is not what we agreed. And we objected to it. But when they insisted, we insisted, instead of fighting in the House, we decided to walk out.
So, Honorable, just a quick one before I come to Mr. Ikoma, because he's spokesperson to the governor of the state. How does the governor play in this? His job is to make the pronunciation, to proclaim the House open and let the House do their thing. How is the governor involved in this?
Well, the governor was involved during on the day of inauguration. The proclamation was brought to the House by the governor himself. He came to the House and sat in the hallowed chambers with all of us.
Is that against any rule? Is that against any rule or law?
Well, it's not allowed. Nobody in inauguration of a house, we don't allow anybody that is not a house member to come in to avoid interference.
I'm asking a question directly. Is there a written rule against that action of the governor? Just asking.
Some rules are residual. Some rules are residual in operation.
Okay.
So that is what the residual rules.
Okay. Well, Mr. Koma, you've heard Honorable Adele speak about this, and the governor is being accused, one way or the other, of influence, subversive influence, or whichever one you want to call it. How do you respond?
Okay, thank you. I thought Honorable Adele would have just limited his argument to what happened in the House and where it concerns the House of Assembly members. You know, unfortunately, he decided, just like the way they are doing, decided to bring in the governor here. First, you asked him a question, whether that violated any rule or any law. He couldn't answer it because they actually invited the governor. The governor came there, sat, and didn't interfere in the activities after the proclamation, after everything, after the activities, the election of the speaker and the deputy speaker. The governor quietly left. He didn't engage in any form of interference. So it's unfortunate that he's bringing the governor into it. Now, he made reference to the election of the speaker. We have a law. The Constitution is the ground norm. And Section 92, Sub 1 clearly states that there shall be a speaker and deputy speaker elected by members from among themselves. He didn't give any condition. No conditions attached. He didn't say they must be principal officers. Sorry, they must be ranking members. For example, the Abia State House of Assembly has 24 members. And out of the 24, it's only 3 members that are ranking members.
Mr. Kioma, it appears that we've lost connection. Okay, he's back now. Go ahead.
So was he saying that if there was no election of any ranking member, or if they were all freshers, that they would not have a speaker? So you can't set a rule or set rules that contradict the provisions, express provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the House of Assembly members decided among themselves to elect a speaker. So the 3 members would have violated the rights of the 23 members if they had insisted, or if anybody had allowed them to go ahead and choose speaker from among the 3 PDP members that returned as the ranking members.
But Mr. Kioma, Mr. Kioma, I hope you were listening to Honorable Adiele, who also said that during the election of the deputy speaker, that other members were trying to raise their hands to make a nomination, but the clerk ignored them. That happened on 2 occasions. But the clerk is not a member of any political party, so why would the clerk interfere in the election of key members of the State Assembly in such a manner?
From my own observation, I wish he could bring the video that's on that of speaker. When the clerk called for the nomination, after the first nomination, he called for whether there was another nomination. There was no response. It was after, go and check the video very well. It was after he had hit the gavel that one person now raised his hand, because they were just reluctant. I'm sure what they did was they knew what they were doing. Maybe they just wanted to deceive members of the public and give them the impression that they were stopped from nominating their own. Then clerk, go and check the video very well, because I was very observant on that particular one. He had hit the gavel when this man now raised his hand. And he was even laughing. So, I mean, the man that raised his hand, he was laughing. So they had already made up their mind, because our people, our members are adduced, the necessary facts backed by the Constitution to say you cannot, because ab initio, the intention was just to impose a particular individual as the speaker. That was the arrangement they had, and it didn't work out. And because our people were able to cite the section of the Constitution that gives the House members the opportunity to choose their speaker, and not within the, among the ranking members only.
But you do agree, Honorable Mr. Kioma, that, it's a first, it's against the run of play to have a speaker from a political party that doesn't form the majority of numbers in the State Assembly. Apart from that, the speaker is a first-term speaker. Do you agree?
Sorry, I just cited the Constitution. I said section 92, sub 1. Read through it. That settles it. They're talking about rules. We are now asking a question, should there are rules override the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? It's very simple. Read it. It's very clear. And they know. Because when they were making the argument, dwelling on their rules, they ignored them until they met with all the members, and our own members came up with their sound argument. Said, look at what the Constitution says. And it is very clear. Never, there is nothing like a ranking member. And you could see, even they just concluded elections in the Senate and the House of Reps, you could see that minority members, first time took part in the election. And this is not the first time it will be happening.
Of course, there's no rule, according to your analysis, that says the governor cannot be part of the proceedings. But then, would the presence of the governor would have in any way had an influence or been a form of pressure on the choice of who emerged during the election?
At the moment, they can't make any reference. They can't make reference to any action taken by the governor that implies intervention or attempt to influence the activities of the House. They know that. The governor is a gentleman. They know this. You understand? I wouldn't want to begin to quote some of their members, what they were saying when they came out. You okay? So they were there. So the governor sat calmly, never interfered in any way. They carried out their own activity.
Honorable Kioma, are you still with us? I hate to put you on the spot. If you're back, I'd like to ask you. I'd like to ask you this.
The clerk was appointed by the PDP. The clerk has been there for years. He wasn't appointed by Governor Alex Oti.
But there's a new sheriff in town. There's a new governor in town.
And the clerk is not working for the governor. He has been serving them. He's been there. He's not working for the governor. So the governor has nothing to do. And whatever, if they have crisis in the house and seek the intervention of the governor now would have the opportunity to intervene and assist them. They've not told the governor they have
very quickly, let me ask you this, Mr. Kioma. Did the governor hold any meeting with the State Assembly lawmakers before the election?
Of course, yes. He held a meeting with them. And it was just a peaceful meeting. He just told them, gentlemen, you have the freedom to take your decision to elect who will be your speaker. I am not interfering, but I want things to be peacefully done. There should be peace. There shouldn't be any, just symbiotic relationship between the legislature and the executive.
Honorable Adiele, let me come to you now. You heard Mr. Kioma talk about the Constitution and how it overrules any standing rules that you may have in the House that guides the election of your principal officers. How do you respond to that?
Well, he cited the Constitution as it favors him, but he lost sight of Section 311 of the same Constitution that says that in electing any principal officer of the House, that it must be taken from the ranking members. Now, there are ranking members in the House. And so if you want to do anything, you start first with the ranking members. That is what I have to say. It's just that they want to do their own thing the way they want to.
Okay, well, Honorable, we have to run now. Honorable Adiele, if you can hear me very quickly in 5 seconds. What is the PDP going to do now? What is the PDP going to do now in this current situation? Any action to be expected from the PDP?
About the speakership and the deputy speakership.
And everything else that you are not happy with now?
Earlier, we have left the speaker and the deputy speaker. Let it go. Let it go. But that of the majority leader and the chief whip and the other principal officers, we are going to contest them.
Okay.
And if they don't give us the chance, we might decide to contest all of them, including the speaker at the court of law.
All right, then we thank you very much this morning. Honorable Godwin Adiele, member representing Ukwa West State Constituency, Abia State House of Assembly, as well as Ferdinand Ekoma, who is Special Advisor to Governor Oti on Media and Publicity. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of our program this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's Sunrise Daily this morning. Thank you for the privilege of being a part of your morning. Have a lovely weekend. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Yes, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I am Bukola Koka.
Indeed, thank you all those of you that sent in your messages and comments. Apologies, we can't take them, but we want to wish you a fantastic weekend. We can't take all the comments and all of that, but we do appreciate the tweets, the emails, and all of that. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of your week. Enjoy your weekend. I'm Neota Igbe.
I'm Chamberlain, so we'll see you later. Goodbye.